Jerry Krause is often portrayed as an NBA villain, as he often receives the blame for the downfall of the Chicago Bulls dynasty of the 1990s. But many people fail to give Krause credit, as he's part of the reason that the Bulls even got a dynasty in the first place. And there was a time where he was considered a mastermind by the entire NBA and was praised by the city of Chicago. His story begins in 1985 when Krause was hired to become the general manager of the Chicago Bulls, and he was given the job of building a successful roster around Michael Jordan, who was coming off a very successful rookie season that ended with Rookie of the Year honors. Krause decided that the first move that needed to be made was to fire head coach Kevin Lowry and replace him with Stan Albeck. In 1986, Jerry Krause ultimately made the decision to limit Michael Jordan's playing time following Jordan's return from a broken foot. And Michael Jordan was absolutely furious with Krause and the entire Bulls management, and this was the beginning of the sour relationship of Jerry Krause and Michael Jordan, as Jordan would continue to harass Krause for the rest of his time in Chicago. Once Jordan's time restriction was gone, Jordan was able to sneak the Bulls into the NBA playoffs. However, they would lose in the first round to the Boston Celtics. Following this, Stan Albeck would be fired and would be replaced by Doug Collins, who in 1988 would lead the Bulls to their first 50-win season since 1974. But let's go back just a little bit to the 1987 NBA draft. This is where, for the first time, we can see that Jerry Krause is willing to risk big in order to get pieces that he wants to win. This time, he traded for the Seattle Supersonics' recent draft selection of Central Arkansas forward Scottie Pippen in exchange for the 8th overall pick, as well as some more draft compensation. Also in this draft, Krause and the Bulls would make the very smart pick of Horace Grant, 10th overall, who would be a really solid piece in the Bulls' first three-peat. Also, he would trade Charles Oakley in 1988 for Bill Cartwright, who was also a defensive powerhouse, for the first three-peat. So now Michael Jordan has some help. He has his running mate in Scottie Pippen, and the Bulls would make the conference finals in 1989, but would fall short to the bad boy Pistons led by Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas. Krause then became frustrated with Doug Collins, so what did he do? Well, he did what he would do with every other coach. He fired him and hired Phil Jackson, a former NBA player, a Continental Basketball Association coach, and at the time of his hiring, he was actually a member of Doug Collins' staff. So he was already in the organization, so they hired him. And this turned out to be absolutely genius. Also, in 1990, Krause would select Toni Kukoc, a Croatian star. However, Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen made it their mission in the 1992 Olympics to give Kukoc absolute hell after learning that Jerry Krause was a huge fan of him. As remember, Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen both loved to harass Jerry Krause. In 1991, the Bulls would finally get their first NBA championship against the Los Angeles Lakers, and it was looking like the hiring of Phil Jackson was an incredible one. Following the 1991 NBA championship, Scottie Pippen would sign that famous deal that was worth $18 million for 7 years. Jerry Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the Bulls, wanted Pippen not to take this deal because they thought it was too long, but Pippen, coming from poverty, wanted to have the longevity over the value. And after he signed it, there were no complaints from the Bulls management, as they had the second best player on their team locked up until 1998. This will come back later, so just bear with me. The Bulls' success would continue in 1992 and 1993 as the Bulls would complete the three-peat. However, following the 1993 season, Michael Jordan made the announcement that he would be retiring in order to pursue the sport of baseball. The NBA superhero was now out of the NBA, and the Bulls and Jerry Krause were in a very, very tough spot. However, Jerry Krause made the very smart decision not to blow everything up, not to overreact. Many would have just started a rebuild. Everybody would have been gone. Phil Jackson would have been fired, but that is not what Jerry Krause did. Jerry Krause still believed in his team. He believed in Toni Kukoc. He believed in Scottie Pippen, and he decided that, okay, we're just going to run through Scottie Pippen. That's what we're going to do, and it's going to work well. And Scottie Pippen had the best 2 seasons of his career without Michael Jordan. However, Michael Jordan would return to the team in 1995, and of course, Jerry Krause and everybody in the Bulls were thrilled about this, but Michael Jordan would not lead the Bulls to an immediate championship, as they would lose to Shaquille O'Neal and the Orlando Magic in the 1995 playoffs. Following this, Jerry Krause decided that the Bulls needed a retool, not a full rebuild, but that this team was not going to win an NBA championship at the current state. So he decided they had already moved on from Horace Grant. He had actually joined the Orlando Magic and was on that Orlando Magic team that beat Michael Jordan and the Bulls. But now they needed some defense. So who did they get? Well, they got Dennis Rodman, one of the best NBA defenders. He was on the Bad Boy Pistons. He had finished his time in San Antonio. So now he was a member of the Chicago Bulls. Also, the Bulls decided they needed some shooting as they had lost BJ Armstrong. So they signed Steve Kerr. This was a great move. And in the 1995-1996 season, the Bulls had arguably the single greatest season ever, winning 72 games and only losing 10 times. This, at the time, was the greatest single season in NBA history. They would finish it off, unlike the 2015-2016 Warriors, and win the NBA championship. The Bulls were officially back in town, but much of the credit was going to Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and Phil Jackson. Jerry Krause was starting to feel jealous as he felt that his work was always being overlooked. Also, Krause absolutely hated the ways that Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen would harass him about his weight and height, as he was very self-conscious about these things, even down to when he was a child. And honestly, there's nothing he could do about it. I mean, he couldn't get rid of Michael Jordan. He would be absolutely crucified by the city of Chicago and the entire NBA, so he just kind of dealt with it. However, following the Bulls winning the 1997 NBA championship, their 5th title at this point, all hell would break loose this summer, as Jerry Krause informed Phil Jackson that the 1997-1998 season would be his last as the Bulls head coach, as Krause wanted to go through a rebuild for the future. This absolutely infuriated Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and the entire city of Chicago. They felt disrespected, as the players felt as though they were the ones in the locker room and playing the game, so they should ultimately make the decision on whether or not they needed to rebuild. And they were still really successful. I mean, they had won back-to-back NBA championships. They had won 3 in 91, 92, and 93. And so, I mean, they had a right for this, but I also see where Jerry Krause was trying to go with this, that the NBA was starting to get younger. They were starting to get older. They were now the old ones of the NBA, so that they needed to make a move. I do understand that. But I honestly agree more with Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson. But regardless, Scottie Pippen was also very upset about his money situation. As remember, I told you that Scottie Pippen signed that 7-year deal worth $18 million. However, he expected this deal to be restructured in order for him to receive more money, as he was not even in the top 100 of highest paid players, but was basically second on every single stat line for the Bulls, and even some of them he was first, behind just Michael Jordan. But the Bulls told him, listen, you signed the contract, we're not budging. And, well, he got so mad that he was like, okay, well, I'm not going to suit up with you. I'm going to demand a trade, and I'm not playing until I'm in another city. However, Michael Jordan convinced him to run it back one more time, and the Bulls would win their 6th and final NBA championship against the Utah Jazz. And in Game 6, Michael Jordan would hit his most iconic shot ever. However, after this, it was over. Phil Jackson was let go by the Bulls. Michael Jordan went back into retirement. Scottie Pippen headed to Houston, and Phil Jackson and Dennis Rodman teamed up on the Los Angeles Lakers. As Phil Jackson became the coach, Rodman played for a season, and that was basically it. The Bulls would go into rebuild mode, and their leader was now Tony Kukoc. However, this rebuild did not go as planned, and it was decided that basically it was going to take a lot longer than Jerry Krause was willing to work with. So following the 2003 season, Jerry Krause would retire, and in March of 2017, Jerry Krause would tragically pass away due to health complications, most think due to his weight. After this, he would be inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame, which is definitely deserved. He is one of the greatest general managers of all time. There's no doubt about it. He's a huge part of the Bulls' success. However, his greediness and need for attention ended up being the cause of his greatest downfall, as in 1997, he made the quote that players and coaches don't win championships, organizations do. Basically saying that I need a lot more credit than what I'm getting. And that is just... it's unfortunate, because without the arrogance of him, I mean, there's no telling where the Bulls could have gone. And even when Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen didn't end up calling it quits, the rebuild might have been a little easier. It might not have been as sour. But anyways, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please show it by hitting the like button and subscribing for more content just like this. It helps me out a ton, and it absolutely makes my day. Until next time, I want you to have an awesome day. Comment down below. What do you think of Jerry Krause? Do you love him? You hate him? You think there's some things he needs to get credit for? I kind of stand in that, I think he needs the credit, but I don't love Jerry Krause by any means. But anyways, y'all have an awesome day, like I said, and I'll see y'all later.